Product management is definitely having its moment in the sun as a career path for grads. And in our opinion, that's for good reason. It's high impact, it's engaging, and it combines a lot of the best parts of engineering, design, and business.
Agreed, but these are all very abstract descriptions. None of them really talk about what it's like to be a graduate product manager.
Those abstract descriptions are one thing, and actually knowing what it's like day to day is another thing altogether.
So today we're going to talk about what it's actually like to be a graduate product manager. Now, we each started PMing about 2 years ago, and over that time, we've got to experience a bunch of different PM roles, and we've worked with a ton of other graduate product managers as well. So we have a little bit of insight into what it's like.
All right, so let's get into it. But as we are talking through this, just remember that every experience will be different, PM to PM, company to company. So even though we've put together this video and we think it should be reasonably representative, just keep in mind that your experience might be a little bit different.
First things first, as a product manager, we found ourselves wearing a ton of different hats. So if you have a look at one of our calendars, we can end up doing, strategy and having conversations with our users in the morning, be having a conversation with somebody from another team over lunch about some other work that they're doing, and then in the afternoon be doing some personal growth with our managers, maybe working directly with our designers and our engineers on a specific piece of dev work, and doing some marketing work. You can see even over one day, we're spanning a ton of different things.
This means a lot of context switching. You're doing a lot of disparate tasks in any one day, rather than going deep on one task in one day. This can be a bit of a blessing and a curse. I think for people like us, it can be, quite adrenaline inducing, it's really fun, it's really engaging, you're doing all these different things. But then on the flip side, it can also be a little bit draining and tiring. There are times when I have like a particular piece of work that I really want to focus on, and I cannot find like 2 or 3 hours to block out during the day to just focus on that.
The other thing is you need to learn a lot really, really quickly to do this. So those things we mentioned just before, you have to be able to engage with developers and designers on one particular thing and then go talk to marketing about something totally and utterly different. Maybe you're working with the data and the numbers in the morning, and then you need to immediately go and do some of the more kind of empathy-driven work, speaking to users and trying to understand their perspective of the world and the sorts of things that they're struggling with. So you find yourself needing to learn a lot, and you never really have time to just sit down and go deep on learning one thing. You have to learn as you go across a whole bunch of different areas.
This means there's always a new challenge, but on the flip side, there's so much opportunity for career growth and personal growth. The second big thing about being a grad product manager is that you have a ton of autonomy. I remember when I first started full-time at the start of this year, I joined and my manager was basically like, we want to run this early access program for a small cohort of customers that want early access to this feature and basically test how they use it and, check whether the customer feedback is all positive. And she basically gave me this task. I think I was like 3 or 4 weeks in, and she was like, off you go, figure it out. I had obviously never run an early access program. I didn't know what that looked like or how that worked, but I figured it out. And, it was very much that thing of you learn as you go, you learn on the job, you talk to people who know more than you read the right materials, and you figure it out. But the point is that I had a lot of autonomy in figuring out, what the best way to do that was, how I felt that we should run it, and what the best way to get to the right outcome was.
So you're constantly given the autonomy to approach getting to a particular outcome in the way that you see best. That means that there are a million different ways that, the first series of tasks that a product manager might end up doing as a grad can go. And you have a lot of control over what that is. So if you really want to lean into a particular thing, you do have the chance to do that. And that's really, really exciting.
This also really accelerates your learning. You're pretty much forced to learn as you go. So there's not really any other option. Like, you have to learn, you have to figure it out, or you're not going to get the outcome.
You sink or swim, don't you?
Yeah, it's like baptism by fire.
Now, the flip side of this, which I think we really love, but can be really draining sometimes, is you have to be super proactive all the time. There's never like, here's steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can just go and follow them and listen to some music whilst you do it, and it'll just be really nice and chill. You're constantly charting your own path through things. Definitely another one of those things that can be a blessing, but it can also be a curse. The third big thing about being a graduate product manager is you don't always know if you're doing a good job. Now, for a developer, you can sort of chart whether you're successful over even the course of a day or maybe a week, because you can see what code you've written and what it does and does it work well and all of these sorts of things. You have that really nice short feedback loop. And also feedback from your fellow developers saying, hey, this is a really great job that you've done here. With product managers, you're constantly working kind of on the edge of the unknown, and you don't actually know whether you've done a good job, often for as much as like a year. So for example, a few months into my time, I launched a new feature, but we had to wait several months to figure out whether that feature was actually successful, let alone whether the things I'd done on that were successful and had contributed to that success meaningfully. And so I didn't really know if I'd done a good job on that feature for a long time afterward. And then if you think about things like strategy, which are even over a longer time scale, it can often be 1, 2, 3 years before you actually see whether the work that you did was successful.
The other thing is, as a PM, you're usually the only PM on a team, or even you'll have one PM across multiple teams. Unlike being something like a developer, it's very rare that you only have one developer on a team. So it's harder to get that day-to-day direct kind of circumstantial feedback that you might get as you're doing the job.
This is compounded by the fact that there are so many facets to a PM's role, like we talked about before. And so it can be hard to know which parts of that role you're doing well and which parts you're not doing so well. And you kind of have to let different patterns play out over and over again before you kind of pick up the common thread of the things that you're doing particularly well and maybe some of the things that you could do with working on a little bit. So it takes a while to kind of get a map of your own competency, I suppose.
The other thing is there's always going to be times when what you're building or the problem that you're trying to solve or the thing that you're trying to figure out is just really hard, and it can be really difficult not to feel like that's a reflection on you and your ability or your competency in your role. But that's just the nature of working with ambiguity. It's just going to be hard a lot of the time. So big thing number 4 about being a grad PM is that you are constantly out of your comfort zone. As an example, kind of as a function of your role, it's common that a very junior PM might end up working with very senior counterparts. So for example, designers or engineers, and it could be really challenging to feel confident sparring or debating something with those people. But it's actually super important, and it's a really important part of your job to be able to do that and do that well. But it's challenging, if you're fresh out of uni and this is your first job or your first stint in product management and you're, needing to spar something with a very senior engineer or designer. It's intimidating and it's overwhelming, and you have to kind of just learn to sit with that feeling and get more comfortable with it over time.
Yeah, 100%. As a PM, you sort of constantly expand to fill different spaces. So we always talk about product management as like, you're sort of the glue. You're the person who does whatever needs to be done in order to make an outcome happen, in order to get the job done. And because of that, you really end up kind of expanding what you're doing all the time, which means you're constantly doing things that are really new. Sort of like you see a problem, you fix the problem, but you haven't encountered that type of problem before, and you really have to get used to that. I think the example you use is a really good one, and that can really feel uncomfortable to begin with. You do learn very quickly, but it's sort of an ongoing thing. You learn one thing and then you're out of your comfort zone somewhere else, and then you learn that and you're out of your comfort zone somewhere else again.
So inherently in this role, there's a lot of ambiguity, and that means there are new challenges every day. Like Gabriel said, there's constantly a new challenge, and then you expand your comfort zone to get comfortable with that challenge, and then there's the next horizon, the next challenge that you haven't faced yet.
The final key point we want to touch on about being a graduate PM is that you end up working with a ton of super smart people. So we're lucky enough to work with, apart from just a bunch of amazing PM and design and engineering leaders from some of the best people there are across the industry, we work with PMs who are also novelists or people who have amazing, fascinating backgrounds in academia, in philosophy, in different sciences, in data, and all of these amazing places. And you spend a lot of time talking to these incredible people.
So again, this is a bit of a common thread, but it means that there's a ton of learning happening. You've got these fantastic people to learn from. It's also a great way to expand your thinking. You're being exposed to, perspectives from people that have heaps and heaps of experience or a different experience to you. And so it just means that you're able to get your head around more things, see more perspectives, see different points of view, and become a better product manager.
The flip side of this, though, is that you really have to learn to live with imposter syndrome. You are constantly, as we've just been talking about, out of your comfort zone. You're surrounded by amazingly smart people. It's very easy and very natural to feel like, why am I the person who should be doing this? Why should I be making these decisions? Why should anybody listen to me in these things? And I think that's just a constant part of that to some degree. It doesn't necessarily mean you're doing a bad job. In fact, probably the opposite a lot of the time. And you sort of have to learn to just be comfortable with that feeling. But it can be really hard to begin with, and I definitely still struggle with that. It's such an exciting space to be working in, and we hope that if this is something that you're interested in doing, that you embrace some of those really positive things, but you also understand that some of the downsides, some of the hard things you might face as a product manager are really normal. And a lot of the time it's like dealing with the shit that makes the highs of it even better. If you do have any more questions about what it's like to be a PM or anything to do with graduate PM, please do feel free to drop them in the comments. We'll try and make another video to follow up if there are, questions about that.
You can see all of our other videos about product management in the channel. We've got a playlist covering them, which we will leave in the description as a link. We've also put together a guide for people that are interested in associate product management or are transitioning into product management. We've basically curated all of our favorite resources and put them in one page. It's an evolving document. We add things to it all the time. So we'll also leave that in the description below if you're interested in checking that out. That's it for this video. Stay tuned for the next one. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.